From Synozur, this is Polaris. I'm Chris McNulty. The Microsoft 365 Community Conference kicks off next month. For all its focus on AI news, keynotes, and announcements, what makes this event so strong is the community itself. Today, we'll talk to Mark Kashman of Microsoft. He's the always visible connection point between the community and Microsoft. What can you expect as a community member? How can you best get engaged? And how do you sustain your connection with Microsoft and your colleagues in the months to come? This is Polaris. Welcome to Polaris Pathways. I'm your host, Chris McNulty. Synozur is the transformation company, helping you navigate strategies and leadership culture with ease. Today, I'm happy to introduce Mark Kashman, Senior Product Manager at Microsoft, host of the Intro Zone, where I also co-host, and a good friend. And once again this week, I'm interviewing the author of multiple books. In his spare time, Mark writes children's books. Catterslug, Our Monster, and more, all available on Amazon.com or wherever you buy books. He'll join us in just a minute. Let's define our terms and our data points. Next week, the M365 Community Conference kicks off in Las Vegas. One thing to keep in mind as we head into conference week, on Thursday, May 8th, Jared Spataro will deliver the closing keynote. He's the Microsoft Chief Marketing Officer for AI. Last week, he led a series of Copilot announcements, the Copilot Wave 2 announcements. These include the new Copilot app, AI Search, GPT-4o visual design, Copilot notebooks, and a new agent store. Microsoft also released this year's version of their Work Trend Index, their annual research report on the major themes for digital work across the world. It describes a vision of the emerging so-called frontier firm, where a new job role, the agent boss, can help orchestrate sets of AI-powered agents to deliver enhanced automation and productivity. That future isn't here yet, but you can expect to catch a glimpse of it next week as Jared spotlights and shows many key moments from those announcements and his research. The M365 conference is a key event for Microsoft, but it's more than just sessions and the expo hall. It's an event for the community. Each year, more than 200 grassroots events are held around the world. Most of them are free events where you can engage with experts, solution providers, and other members of the community. Many of them can be found at communitydays.org. You can search by location and find what's coming to your part of the world, or find help to create your own. Okay, we have Mark waiting in our virtual green room. Let's go. So today on Polaris, I am excited to introduce you to a voice that may be familiar to those of you who have heard me on other podcasts. Our guest today is, of course, the world-famous and wonderful Mark Kashman from Microsoft. Mark, welcome to Polaris.
Hello, and welcome to the Intro Zone. Wait a minute. Sorry,
should we call it
Chris?
Since this is another podcast, should we just call it the Extra Zone?
Ooh, I love that. Let me start again. Thank you, Chris, for having me on Polaris. It's fantastic to be here, and I love switching it up where I'm in the hot seat.
I think after enough years of my coming on to the Intro Zone to barrage you with extraneous chatter about sports ball and Tom Brady and other things. Anyway, I have a lot to atone for, though it may seem impossible. Mark, I know there's folks in the audience who are unfamiliar with you. So could you just take a moment and talk about your role at Microsoft and how you got there?
Absolutely. I am a senior product manager, which means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But for me, I sit on the engineering side of things, but I have a history of marketing. So I'm a product manager from the way that I learned how to be a product manager from a marketing perspective, embedded within engineering. There's a lot of things that the SharePoint and OneDrive team does, and it's my privilege to take it that last mile. But specifically in the role that I am taking on now, it really is the last mile for an adoption perspective. So we do a lot of end user events. We've got a lot of digital content that goes out, a lot of socials. But historically, I've been on the SharePoint team the whole time, pretty much under Jeff Teeper. Even when I was in marketing, I always felt like I reported up through Jeff Teeper. But in essence, I have been living with SharePoint for over a decade and at Microsoft for almost 2 decades.
Yes, for all the years and all the events with SharePoint, Jeff Teeper certainly has been a constant presence in so many of our lives. When we talk about that, though, Mark, where are you calling in from today?
As the crow flies, I'm not too far from the Microsoft headquarters. That's Redmond, Washington. But if you go across the pond and across a couple of bridges, I'm actually in West Seattle, which is, as it sounds, west of Seattle, but it is its own neighborhood, just a little bit outside of the Elliott Bay area.
Although technically, folks, if you're looking at this on the map, West Seattle is sort of south of Pike Place. But Mark, it wouldn't be you and I on a podcast without going in a million different directions at once. But
I'm ready for any direction. I even have my sports reference ready. Whenever you say, let's talk sports, I'm ready.
That will be coming. So, Mark, when we were getting ready for this, one of the things I know that has been part of your journey and the journey you bring customers on is really focusing on engagement and adoption and best practices. Microsoft has a plethora of tools that's introduced to productivity over the years, frequently 3 or 4 things that look like they may do the same thing at the same time. And so deciding which thing to use, when, and why is an important part of that journey.
Yeah, a lot of it is because we have a broad portfolio. Some of it is technology that's been around for quite some time, and older technologies like SharePoint in their heyday took on a lot of different roles where it really was, as some would say, 6 servers in one. And I think Microsoft 365, or even when it was Office 365, took on that same approach. There's a lot of things that it can do. There's a lot of products, a lot of features, and of course, by nature of just how people work on things to try to go forward in the same direction, sometimes you get elements that cross over to achieve the same goal, maybe in a different way, maybe across a couple of different scenarios. But at that most parent level, people kind of look at it and go, well, what do I use when? And it always boils down to, what are you trying to accomplish? And there are some newer technologies that might be taking over some of the what used to be done by another tool. And there again is that history of something that used to do a lot more than really what it should be used for now. And that's a gray area.
I will say the strangest place I've ever had to deal with that question myself was about 7 or 8 years ago. We were on vacation down in Arizona. I was sitting in the hot tub and there were 2 other gentlemen in there and, minor chit chat. Where do you work? And once you say the word Microsoft, the question that came my way on vacation was, so I was wondering, when should I use SharePoint and when should I use OneDrive?
Well, we've got a great help article for that because I think that question has come up. I think my favorite answer, and it was a collective, I remember internally with Microsoft MVPs. And then, once you put it out there, you kind of refine it as you go. It was the me, we, us answer. If it's a file for me, that's OneDrive. If it's for the we of the team, that's most likely going to be either Teams or SharePoint. And if it's for us, it should be a record center or a document center. But it's those types of answers to what might be, just relaxing in the spa, whether you're wearing a towel or not. Let's not get into that. But, those are great things that come up. I think you don't shy away from answering the question. You don't say to somebody, look, I'm on vacation. Because a lot of times, you represent Microsoft or you represent Synozur and, we want to have nice conversations, whatever the topic might be. And I don't think anybody like you or me or MVPs or anybody that kind of gets comfortable with something, whatever the tech is, those are great questions to answer. And I think if you had that same question asked at one spa and then you went to another spa 3 months later, I bet you would give a different answer each time, maybe because something you were thinking or based on what it is they actually told you, maybe a little bit more detail that refined what you might suggest to them.
The one thing that I think is durable about Microsoft 365 collaboration technology is that there's always something new. And so those classic what to use when discussions, I think they take on new vibrancy when you're looking at questions like, when do I use lists? When do I use loop? Or when do I use regular Copilot? Or when do I build an agent? Like, are you seeing some of those as areas that Microsoft customers are still exploring?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest what to use when categories for me, or at least I get to be a part of by nature of a product I worked on quite a lot and still do a little bit with Microsoft Lists. And it really was this, the turn of the corner when Loop came out. The conversation was around tasks. And the question was, where do I manage my tasks? Do I do it in Planner, Project, To Do, Lists, Excel, on and on?
Right.
And then comes Loop. We had a really great answer when you really narrow it down to personal tasks or team tasks. It really was, is it To Do or Planner? And now they're kind of one and the same as that evolved. Lists certainly is a lot more than just tasks, but it has a task list template that historically has always been there. But Loop now has a task element to it, and it's really good. And now the part of the answer isn't just so much the which tool are you comfortable with. Not everybody's comfortable with one or the other or both or all of them. But it also means, where do you want to manage your tasks? Do you want to do it in that particular technology, or do you want to do it where maybe is agnostic to the technology? So Loop has this great element that adds a lot of flexibility to the conversation. You can do a lot in all of these tools, but there's one, Loop, that enables you to kind of do everything you want within Teams or Outlook or in itself. And to your point, the conversation evolves. You talk about tasks 6 months from now, and it might be, the element of Copilot and how you can just do some natural language conversation to create a new task list that maybe gets created as a Copilot page, which technically is Loop on the back end. And, for this conversation, that doesn't matter. But the what tool you use to start a new task list might just be, kind of a broader form, like TJ taught you and I to do Control H, Windows key H, to bring up the speech to text, which might be me adding a prompt into a Copilot conversation that I'm having with Copilot.
I will, as a side note on that, last week I was presenting at the AIM Summit down in Atlanta, and I was doing a session on Copilot, and I shared TJ's tip. And someone in the audience said, "Hey, I can't find Windows H here on my keyboard. Can you help me?" And I walked over to take a look and realized he was trolling me because he was on a Mac.
The best way to troll somebody right back on a Mac is just to try to do a touch screen on their screen and say, why isn't my finger working on your screen?
It is one of my questions. One of our kids has a HP laptop, which by design is not a touchscreen. And when he asks for help, he has to always remind me, not a touchscreen, not a touchscreen.
Yeah.
Why are you putting your fingerprint on
That's
it?
right. So he's got a nice cloth to wipe up your fingerprints.
So let's be a little more practical here, Mark. Modern work tools have a collective usage of approximately 500 million people in any given month. So obviously, it's really hard for you to reach out and have a moment with 500 million people on any regular basis. Who do you find that you're working with the most?
A lot of it for me is pretty tactical. We are creating content that's meant to be for a lot of people. So our channels, as broad of reach as they have, and of course we always want to reach as many people as we can. Sometimes it's direct to the end user, those that subscribe to our YouTube channel or are, on Twitter and responding and engaging there. But then there's a lot of the organic pickup from people that will then take that, and they are the trainer. Sometimes those are very directly our Microsoft, MVPs who are doing that as a part of their job. But a lot of the people, and this is where it's a little bit anecdotal, but a lot of people that then reach back to me with something that maybe they came across to ask, is it okay if I share this with my internal team, or can I use that slide or that video or other asset that we created? That then teaches me that we're actually speaking to those internal evangelists, which is kind of the sweet spot. How can we get those people that will help carry it forward? So if we can get a good ear to that evangelist who isn't just an MVP, but maybe is to hopefully scale through thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people that will then talk to their tens or 20s or hundreds of people within their organization, that's, I think, where we really focus on, or at least I hope that we're reaching those people.
It sounds like those roles, those folks who do it, are incredibly valuable. From the organization's perspective, what are some of the things that they can do to help make sure that those internal advocates have the best impact?
Yeah, I think, I don't want to misuse the phrase, but ensure that they have a seat at the table. If just for internal conversations, they should know the direction of the business. They should know what licenses they have, so that what tools are available to them. They should also have a voice of maybe what should be enabled for them, not just Microsoft 365, but whatever technology that it is that they're thinking about. From an IT perspective, they might be thinking more about what can we block or disable versus, what is the business trying to do. And I think one of the roles that I don't know what other companies describe them as, but for us, it's that the role of somebody who is more focused on use and adoption. So having the constant conversation, what are we trying to accomplish? What tools do we have? Do we need to buy something else, or do we need to build it? And so if they have a seat at the table, they'll be able to provide guidance. But if they know what's coming, and vice versa, they know what we're providing from a Microsoft technology perspective, what's coming next, they can be that internal trusted advisor that is knowledgeable about the direction of the business.
Part of your role at Microsoft is to deliver executive briefings when these big customers come through the briefing center on the Redmond campus. You'll show a bunch of new technology, and a leader, typically a CIO or someone on the business side, will turn around to their team and ask a question like, do we have that? In your experience, what are some of those really exciting tools or features that make people turn around and ask that question?
Yeah, it's funny. I just want to say the thing to your question, it just made me remember, if you know the other podcast that's out there called Smartless, there's a really great quote from Jason Bateman where he says, "Do I have Tubi?" And if you know the reference out there, hopefully you just got a little chuckle remembering him saying that.
Far be it from us to tell the folks at Smartless what to do. Anyone who can get 3 United States presidents on the same podcast is well ahead of anything I ever hope to do, even with you, Mark.
I make the reference out of pure admiration. I love that show. So to your question, a lot of times for an EBC, they'll bring in a whole host of people from the customer. So maybe you'll get somebody at the CX level, or an IT director, or somebody's in charge of a big initiative. And you also get a mix of people who aren't there for your topic. So they might be a little bit tuned out because they're just waiting, for the other subject matter expert. But what I find often, and this is technology, big or small, but a big one is around what can you do inside of Microsoft Teams? That's pervasive across most conversations, whether I'm talking about lists or SharePoint, or of course the broader topic of Microsoft 365, the what's new and what can we take advantage of. It leads into Teams plus something. So there's Teams plus Viva, which kind of brings up an older conversation to the same question. What about Yammer? Or what about SharePoint for X, SharePoint for the intranet, SharePoint for document management, SharePoint for search used to be a big one. Copilot is our newest, big thing that we're pushing, but it's really not in everybody's face right now. Besides our advertising, it isn't there for the end user if they haven't enabled it in any fashion. So that's a big one that comes up. And once you show it, if it's something that they have, the conversation will quickly go, do we have it? To, hey, I just tried that and it was really easy and I think it would be really helpful for, and then they talk amongst themselves for 5 minutes, which is the best part of an EBC. My favorite is not presenting for a little bit in an EBC. That's a testament to it.
And I would mention for the audience that if you're a big enough company to come to an EBC, that's fantastic. If you're not, there are plenty of other offices around the world, whether you're looking at the technology centers, the innovation hubs, where you can go in more locally and still get those deep dives with Microsoft resources in the room, or things that run across the community. So I think that what you're describing is something that can happen for just about any company and just about any level.
I think so. I mean, there's so many virtual opportunities with Microsoft partners. There's the TechCommunity, if it's a little bit more text-based question forums, in-person events,
So
But
you just mentioned something, Mark. What is the tech community?
yeah, the tech community is something that's very close to my team now. It used to be something that was pretty close because I just published a lot out into the tech community. But if you go to techcommunity.microsoft.com, it is a place where we do a lot of things. There's open forum conversations where anybody who logs in, signs in, it's free, can ask a question to a specific community. So it's really easy to find a community about products, about different topics, and there's a lot of people who are engaged there. We also use it to put out our blogs. We call them the community blogs because it's kind of off the parent blog for Microsoft.com. It's a different space and usually is a different altitude. What are we shipping? What should you know? Here's a report that just came out and here's a little bit of a breakdown of it. And then off of those is the real engagement. And I know this sounds a little silly, but I think the most valuable thing of a blog besides the awareness campaign is the comments section. You get to at least be a fly on the wall to see what people did or didn't like. So it's a big place for community engagement. The community is truly worldwide, and it's not necessarily bound to only one technology. It's a whole host.
I do like to think of the tech community, to borrow a phrase that I did not think of, is much more practical and tactical than sort of the philosopher king messaging that sometimes lands at the top level of Microsoft. I'm wondering if you could maybe share something also that's practical for our listeners. When you're working, whether it's with advocates or sometimes directly with customers, what is a specific feature that you find that people may not know about, but that can really improve their day-to-day work?
Yeah. So one of the things that I'm actually working on a side blog for my Substack. So this, hopefully I can fit in my answer with what will come fairly soon. The thing that I value and probably use the most beyond some of these tools and technologies is the aspects of rules, actions, and flows. And I'm talking about simple flows, but things when you do need a little bit more within Power Automate. I want to set a rule that maybe directs my attention to a specific email. It changes color or it moves to a different folder. And that's just helped me organize literally over decades. I have rules that have been running for almost 20 years now.
Really?
But the rules that are more important to me now are kind of what we talked about earlier, how to be notified. But the real rules that I've started to appreciate are things like rules in lists and now in loop, where based on the activity within the list and the other columns of information, how they can really work off each other. It's like you're writing a sentence. If the status changes to approved, let Mark know. If the date changes, let the group know. Just simple. These are really easy things to do. But if you don't know you can do it, that's half the battle.
Rules is a great one. And for those of you listening in the car, we will definitely put some links to all of that in the show notes so you don't have to drive off the road because you're trying to scribble something down here.
Yeah, that's the rules of the road. Don't drive while trying to read an article that Chris sends you.
One of my favorites is the @mention. It allows me to alert someone and they can quickly respond in however they receive the alert. They can add a comment, but it comes back into the document. So it becomes this like micro collaboration space just on a paragraph or just on a fact. It's one of the tools that I really love using.
Yeah, I'll be real quick on this one, but one scenario that happens to me weekly is that there's a woman under Adam Harmitz who is in charge of our weekly readout that we do. We call it the Spec Stand-Up. And I have a very tiny role in something that I provide. It's called Seen and Heard, which is effectively what's going on in the socials and who's talking about OneDrive and SharePoint, and oftentimes give a voice to MVPs so that you can see everybody who's a product maker on the OneDrive and SharePoint team. It's fun for them to see what people are talking about in their feature. So she creates an internal SharePoint page that then you get @mentioned and you get, basically drawn into this conversation through Teams is where we do a lot of the collaborative talking. But then, you get added and sometimes there's a PowerPoint that's going to be presented. You own a slide and they can @mention you, describe what it is they want you to do. When you fill it out, you can kind of check it as done within the PowerPoint or within, wherever it is that you're @mentioned. I can add a comment. I can @mention somebody, and then I have the opportunity to make that a task that I assign that person that I @mentioned. I think that's a great horizontal technology to just have everywhere, wherever we can.
What's that? It's a reminder. It is time for the Mark Kashman gratuitous sports reference brought to you from the classic opening themes of Monday Night Football. Mark,
this is going to be tough because, Chris, your sports knowledge and depth is like the Mariana Trench, and mine is sort of like slightly above sea level. So my sports reference, which was really more of when somebody asked me what I wanted for my birthday, which is coming up. No need to say happy birthday. It's not quite soon. But I told them I wanted to go to a local sports team that is the Seattle Reign. And the Seattle Reign has a game on my birthday. So hopefully everybody in my family is not busy and can come and join me to watch the Reign. I think the Reign is one of the most exciting things that doesn't get enough attention. They got a ton of attention when Megan Rapinoe was on the team. And they, of course, get wonderful crowds. It's pretty big, but I think more people should go. And the Reign are so fun to watch. So my sports reference is telling you what I'm going to do on the evening of my birthday.
And so for those of you listening at home, the Reign play a sport which is referred to in Europe as football, but we call soccer.
Soccer, yes. They are a great soccer team. Seattle's pretty good for the soccer teams, the Reign and the Sounders. But getting a ticket to the Reign never disappoints, even if it's raining, if you know what I mean.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Speaking of a lot of fun, we have a tiny gathering of the Microsoft 365 world coming up next month in Las Vegas, May 6th through 8th, called the M365 Community Conference. Mark, I know that you've been involved in helping structure this event from the get-go. You and I have spoken at many of these conferences going back to the days when it was better known as SharePoint Conference. What are you doing at the conference this year?
Yes. So for the Microsoft 365 Community Conference 2025, which is May 6th through the 8th, not too late to join us if you'd like, I have been put in charge of the Community Lounge. And this is going to be an interactive, fun experience level on the third level. So if you're at the conference, wander up to the third floor. You can't miss it. It's in the big atrium area. And we've got a lot going on. It's really focused around both content, activities, and just for people to be able to get together and have those long-form discussions. We've got things like meetups. So Jeff Teeper and Vasu Jakal and the OneDrive and SharePoint team, the Planner team. We're planning a ton of meetups. They're going to be across the 3 days. So if you like meetups, it's a chance to take photos and talk with people about like-minded things. We also are doing interviews, so 1-to-1, 1-to-2 type interviews with some of those same people, Jeff Teeper, Vasu, but we're also talking with some of the other product makers across a lot of different technologies. And it's kind of a sit, fly on the wall, listen. Those will mostly be for consumption after the conference, but it's just an opportunity to take advantage of who's there and have a little fun in the lounge. And then we're doing things like table topics, which is really informal, chance for 10 or 20 people to sit around a table and talk about something that isn't product related, but it's technology related. So we've got some fun things around neurodiversity, inclusive design, lots of different table topics. And then last is the whole space is designed around people engaging with each other. And sometimes in a self-service fashion, grab some fun food, grab a coffee, go to the creative corner, build out some friendship bracelets or draw some pictures or get your caricature drawn, those types of things. So it's kind of a little break from the keynotes and the breakout sessions and the expo hall, but it's also a really fun place to really focus on community and bring people together.
So recently we had Jeff Teeper and Caruana Gatimu on Polaris as well, talking about the conference. Caruana was talking about her suggestions for folks who were coming to this event for the first time. It's an opportunity to find your people, whoever that may be, because this is a wonderfully diverse community at all sorts of business levels and technical levels. And her guidance was to start with the mobile app, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
I also think what you've described, I think really breaks the tyranny of keynote session, expo session, dinner. keynote session, that gets a little tired. And being able to have that, I think, different engagement, running at different altitudes, is one of the things I know that I find valuable.
We hope so. There are going to be some things that are scheduled, so you'll be able to check the agenda. The app that you referred to is called the Whova app. So a lot of the community lounge activities will be in the Whova app, but it's also designed around, hey, you might just have a free time where you just need to kind of put your laptop away, go for a little walk up the stairs or take the escalator, and just drop into something that maybe you weren't planning, because there's always people to talk to at the community lounge. We got a number of different areas that are staffed with myself, our team, the MVPs, a lot of people from the community. So it is also meant to be just ad hoc conversations. And you'll get some things that are promoted to you, like the tech community. We're going to have a sign about that so people can register if they haven't been, if they're not already a part of that. There are a number of different programs that we're running that hopefully people can discover to get to that point that you're talking about. At the event, tons of opportunity to meet people in person. Outside of the event, there's a lot of places to turn to ask your questions, to share your ideas. One of the things about tech community is the ability for anybody to publish anything, big or small. Pretty much, if you have something that you want to share, you might have your own YouTube channel, you might have your own blog. But if it's something you want to share into this community that's specifically about Microsoft 365 or Power Platform or Azure or something, it's a really nice platform for the voice of everybody. So I hope that we live up to that, Chris, that it is a great place that you can pause and kind of get into something a little bit different at the conference. But it's also meant to be additive. There are a lot of things happening, and we're going to be within the mix of everything.
Yeah, a week in Las Vegas can be a fairly long time, so it's important to be able to have a place to sprint and a place to sort of catch your breath. You were talking about getting questions answered. One of the things that you've earned a fabulous reputation for is the joy that you bring to events when a number of experts are gathered at the front of the auditorium and people get to ask questions in AMA, usually, and ask Microsoft anything. You bring a real joy to that, the way that you can work the mic and get people to feel heard and feel participated, and also elicit the best responses you can get from the experts. What goes through your mind when you're at an event like that? What's your goal?
Well, first, thank you. I have to say AMAs are probably one of my favorite things to do, not just the part that you're talking about where I get to have fun, but it is a time where people really truly get to ask, sometimes people that are hard to get time with, a tough question or to provide that tough feedback. So it is the anything part can honestly sometimes be about anything. But what goes through my mind, I guess it's a couple of things. It's not that I love the microphone and love being on stage, but it is I get to be the intermediary. I'm not always the one answering the question in that scenario, but I get to be sort of the, what's your question, and ask the panel. And then there's always swag involved. And the combination of what was the question, what was the answer, and then what swag did I randomly pick up to give to them that kind of aligns with the question that they're having, the brain just kind of fires and just has fun, because I think it's meant to be fun. We'll be sensitive to that. But I think I fall back on a long time ago. This is probably easily 3 decades ago. I thought becoming an actor would be kind of fun. And in one of the early lessons, it was, half the time you have to remember your lines, but the most important thing is the listening part. Give your partner, person across from you, something to reflect on and something to react to. So I didn't evolve into anything about acting. I honestly am a terrible actor. And I mean that because I just can't quite get beyond the camera and having to fabricate things, but I enjoy when other people do. Then there's that swag element. I try to always bring swag, so you have something to give away, which means you kind of get to talk about the swag and the person, and that usually brings people joy automatically. But I don't know. It's just a fun role that I hope that people enjoy, not just, oh, here's that silly guy and he's cracking jokes. But, I try to squeeze it in so I'm not wasting time. AMAs go really quickly. But at the same time, there's not that dead air of just waiting for the next question.
Well, I do think you've single-handedly managed to not only surface new insight to audience members, but you've raised the bar of expectations for what people want from stickers and socks.
Socks. I unfortunately, I really am getting to the end of the sock supply. So I gotta convince my manager to help me resupply just a few socks. The last ones to remain are list socks, which are the most beautiful socks. And they're an easy giveaway because even if you don't know what Microsoft lists are, the socks are pretty cool.
I will say for Synozur, we have a couple of cases of socks on order for Las Vegas. So in a pinch, if your toes are cold, you know where to go.
And maybe if I get the AMA job, I'll pinch a couple of those so that I can give them away.
More than happy to share. Mark, let me ask you a question that's moving outside the realm of technology and business. One thing I always learn a lot from our guests is a world of culture, usually pop culture, that you may have experienced in the past month or two that's really had an impact. What's something that's been on your mind of late?
Let's see, something cultural. I have been diving into a series of books, not necessarily connected by the actual series, but by the author. You know, when you get an author that you just really like how they write and what they write about is maybe a little bit different than what you're used to. So I've been reading a number of books by a Swedish author in English. Of course, I don't speak or read Swedish, but I think that's why some of how his writing is really interesting to me. But his name is Fredrik Backman or Bachman, Backman. And what first turned me on to him was just a series that was recommended called Beartown. There's 3 in the series. And it's about this small town. It's very oriented around a thing that really wasn't great that happened in its history, but it also highly focused on ice hockey. So I should have had that for my sports reference earlier, but it was just a wonderful series. I read one, I sucked it up. I'm not the fastest reader, but this one I read fairly fast because I was just really into it. And the dynamics of the town, the descriptions of how he describes the characters, the location, it really was just a very intimate read. Not, that it was, anything that maybe was different than the other things that you can read, but it just really was a very personable read where you really felt like, gosh, I'm getting to know the characters. I feel like I'm in this town. I feel cold sometimes because, they're always playing ice hockey. But anyway, it turned me into a Fredrik Backman fan, and I have since read maybe 3 or 4 other of his books. There's one that a lot of people know called A Man Called Ove, which was turned into recently a Tom Hanks movie. I'll end on the last one that I read that I really enjoyed was called Anxious People. Very different as far as the subject matter. But the same type of writing. He just has a great way with words. Anxious People was a really small story, but with some kind of big dynamics across the different people that it interacts with. And he just has a way of getting you into a scene and then referencing back something that didn't quite make sense in chapter 1, but now makes a lot of sense in chapter 7. And it just kind of has a fun heist element to it that really wasn't intended. I feel cultured in reading him outside of the books that I usually like to read, which are kind of thrillers, techno-thriller type things. So it was kind of fun to turn into something that was a little bit more intimate and cultural.
So, Mark, I know that conference is one of the big things that's up next for you. How can our audience stay in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest is I am still one of those people active on Twitter, but I've also moved into the blue sky realm. So if you're into the socials, you can find me there. I'm also very easy to find on LinkedIn. And at events, if I'm at an event, I hope that I'm the most available person that I can be. There are a lot of people that make a lot of time at events. And usually when I'm at an event, especially with the Community Lounge, if you're willing to come to the Community Lounge at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference, I will have endless time. I will not be able to leave the lounge because we're doing a ton of stuff for 3 days. But, I hope that I'm not too hard to find.
Fantastic. Mark, thanks for being our guest here on Polaris. Have a great day and looking forward to speaking again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Chris.
We'll be right back. Up next on Polaris, events. Spring is one of the busiest times of the year for conferences and meetings. Here's what we're watching. Next week, the Microsoft 365 Community Conference, May 5th through 9th in Las Vegas. Learn more and register at nextgen365events.com. Microsoft Build, May 19th through 22nd at the Seattle Convention Center. This event is all about custom software development. Satya Nadella will lead off the keynote. You can attend either live or online at build.microsoft.com. The European Collaboration Summit. This will be May 26th through 28th in Dusseldorf, Germany. Mastering Your AI Rollout, June 12th, 2025. Synozur CEO Michelle Caldwell will present tactics and approaches you can use to shape your AI planning and pilot projects for business success. Our Business Strategy Masterclass. This will be June 27th, hosted online as well. Our own Matt Schaefer will present our new masterclass on how to develop and sustain business strategy with the Synozur Company OS. Heading into summer, Synozur will be sponsoring and speaking at TechCon 365 Seattle. This is being held at the Seattle Convention Center the last week of June. Learn more at techcon365.com. We'll have links to all of that and more in the show notes. You can learn more at synozur.com/events, and we'll add more events throughout the year. And if you have an upcoming event you'd like us to promote on Polaris, please get in touch and we'd be happy to include it. Before we wrap up, I'd like to share a brief reflection. I started working with the SharePoint community almost 2 decades ago at some of the first SharePoint Saturdays. These were regional events, almost always held on a Saturday, usually free, where speakers from around the world would gather in one city or another for a day of free training and educating and networking. I've made so many great friends across the community of speakers, sponsors, and attendees over the years. While there are many events run by Microsoft and major companies around the world, it's important to remember there's space for everyone in this community. Whatever problem you're facing, you can find someone who's faced the same issue. If you've solved a problem, you can probably find someone who'd love to learn from your solution. You don't need to be a prolific speaker or writer to be part of this community. What I love about this community is that it's truly open and open to all. There's a role for everyone. It's also given me a sense of the importance of the community to each member. I remember years ago speaking at SharePoint Saturday, South Florida, where an attendee let me know he had driven in that morning from Jacksonville. I nodded and thanked him for coming to my session. Another of my friends standing nearby lives in Florida, and he asked me if I had any idea how long it takes to drive from Jacksonville to Fort Lauderdale. I did not. It takes 4.5 hours. That's how essential it was to him. So I try to remember Joey Patterson each time I speak at any event, large or small. And I'll be thinking about that and Joey as we get ready for Las Vegas. Well, that's a wrap for another episode. I'd like to thank Mark Kashman for joining us and sharing his thoughts on the Microsoft community and the conference. We encourage you to check out our show page for links to everything we talked about today and more. Visit us at polaris.synozur.com. Send us your questions and feedback for the Synozur team. You can reach us via email at polaris@synozur.com. Remember to rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. Follow us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Polaris is produced with the help of Riverside.fm. Our theme song, Alternative Dream, is provided courtesy of Adobe. Additional music and sound provided by Indie Guy Records. Graphic design by Josh Brantley. Thanks for listening. I'm Chris McNulty, and this has been Polaris, a show that charts the course for business and technology transformation from Synozur. Learn more at synozur.com. See you next time.